Good morning, members, and welcome to this meeting of the Education, Skills and Community Wellbeing, which is being live streamed and recorded. The recording will be made available on the Council website for public listening. Can I also welcome to the meeting Youth Council representatives Greg Dunsmuir from the MSYP for Dumfriesshire and Xenia Iden, MSYP MYSP from Upper Nithsdale, and Secondary Parent Council representative John McGill. Welcome, you all. So members may notice that when calling members to speak, I'll refer to them formally and using their title example, Councillor Jones, so that it's clear who are councillors and who, by process of elimination, are officers. So remote participants, please follow the good practice guidance, which includes muting microphones and switching off your video when you're not addressing the meeting. Writing speak in the Teams chat function when you want to contribute, and if you're in the hall, you can do this on your iPad or iPhone. Please don't repeat contributions already made by other members. No material should be posted in the chat function if it's intended as part of the discussion. The usual standing orders apply, including that any votes will be undertaken by roll call. And if any member has to leave the meeting, please either leave the Teams meeting for that period of time or write leave in the Teams chat function and then write join when you rejoin the meeting so that we can keep track of whether the meeting is quorate. All members should speak clearly, taking their time speaking directly into the microphone when making contributions. And when referring to reports, please provide reference to the relevant page and paragraph to allow everyone to follow. Please focus contributions on areas where clarification is required or to propose an alternative to a recommendation. Similar to the process now followed at full council when considering motions or amendments which are substantive in nature, I'll call a recess where necessary so that I may seek governance advice on competency. This is good practice in governance terms and will also provide for governance to be able to collate and circulate the terms of said motion amendment to members in order that they have the opportunity to properly review it. I hope this process makes matters more efficient and effective, and I seek members' support in implementing this. Are members in agreement? Take silence as approval. And before we move on to business, can I just take a moment to acknowledge that this will be the last committee for Liz Manson, Community Planning and Engagement Manager, before our forthcoming retirement at the end of March. So on behalf of the committee, I'd like to thank her for her contribution to this committee business and the Council over her many years of service and wish her well for the future. Is she online? No? She's not in the room, not online, but we wish her well anyway. So, agenda item number 1, Sediment and apologies. Tracy, can you provide the sediment indicating who's participating remotely, and any apologies, please?
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everyone. We've got 22 members present in total, 11 members present here in person at the Council HQ in Dumfries, being the Chair, the Vice Chair, Councillor Dashbar, Councillor Maureen Johnston, Councillor Stevenson, Councillor Stitt, Councillor Wilson, Julie Irvin, John McGill, and Greg Dunsmuir and Xenia Iden. And we've got 11 members present on Microsoft Teams, being Councillor Brodie, Councillor Davis, Councillor Ingalls, Councillor Lowe, Councillor McGregor, Councillor McCammon, Councillor Marsh, Councillor Walters and Councillor Young. And also online is Greg Black and Anne Barber. We've got no apologies received, Chair, but 6 members not present at the start of the meeting is Councillor Dougie Campbell, Councillor Karen Crothers, Councillor Jim Dempster, Stuart Clement, and 2 of our church reps. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Tracy. Councillor Brodie, you wish in here?
Councillor Dempster will be along shortly. He's got an appointment and we're a bit late, so we'll join the meeting shortly.
Thank you, Councillor Brodie. Okay, so we move to declaration of interest. Any members have any declaration of interest or a statement of connection? Okay, we'll move to the minutes of the previous meeting of the 11th of November 2025. This meeting is for noting. Are members in agreement? Thank you. So we move to agenda item number 4, Education, Skills and Community Wellbeing Revenue Budget Monitoring for 25-26. I have Colin Pentland online, and we've got Marcus and Stephen in the room to assist if members have any questions. Gentlemen, do you have anything to add to the report?
Chair, I've got nothing to add. I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we will move to any member questions, comments. Councillor Stevenson.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And I bring it up every committee that this paper comes to. In Appendix 1, under support and learners, we've got the generic support is overspent by 823,000, but then we've got underspends in behaviour, educational psychologists, other ASL, sensory services, special units and targeted support. So again, have we got the right people in the right place at the right time? Because it doesn't look like it when we're looking at this. And I absolutely do not believe that we do not need any support in, or an underspend of support in behaviour, educational psychologists, other ASL, sensory service, special units and targeted support. So what are we doing if we've got generic support? What are we doing to actually help them move on to become more specialist? And again, we could really do with a full report on this to be brought back on its own, because we need to really drill down into this detail, because this has come now repeatedly to this committee. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Stevenson. Colin or any of you gentlemen in the room who wishes to take this one?
Sorry, I was just going to say it's probably more operational in terms of what the service are doing to address the issues that the councillors have referred to.
Thank you very much, Councillor Stevenson, and I absolutely accept that these budget lines, you have raised these now on a number of occasions, and it certainly is that we are looking as a whole and utilisation of the budget as a whole to support learners, but it doesn't look clear. And I certainly will take that back as a priority, and I note your request that we'll, if I could provide that information further to this meeting to members, because we certainly need to look at where these budget lines fall and the staff that are associated. But I know that the resource is managed as a whole. Quite often it's the same children that we are supporting using this budget, but I do recognise the point that you're making, and I'll prioritise that. Thank you.
Thank you, Gillian. So would this be like a briefing to members? So would you be happy if we had a briefing to all members, and then depending on what that briefing says, whether we need to bring a full report back and look into this? Thank you. Julie Irvine.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of questions. So at 4.2 on page 25, there's an underspend in the early learning childcare budget. And I'm just wondering what's being done to actively promote the importance of early learning childcare, the benefits to children and their families, because it's of real concern that if children aren't accessing these places, then the first time they come across services for additional support is on entry to school. So that is of concern. So I really wondered what was being done to do that. I've got two other questions. Do you want them now or one at a time?
Let's do the one at a time, if you don't mind, Julie.
Thank you.
So who's coming in on that one? Is that you, Colin?
Sorry again, I'll probably have to defer that to officers again about the promoting of child placements. I don't know if the director would be able to assist on that one. Sorry, thank you.
Yeah, we've got Jonathan who's going to come in on that one. Thanks, Colin.
Yeah. Thanks, Julie. Thanks for the question. I suppose it is about the utilisation of the funds that we have. So there is a defined amount that sits as a budget line for ELC, and this year we haven't utilised all of that budget. Now, clearly that is partly due to the drop in population, as we know, pupil population, and the young people that are accessing our services, both in terms of the state-run, the council-wide nurseries that we have, but also those that are in the PVI sector, the numbers are reduced. We're currently going through the process, as you know, of enrolment for this year. We're assessing what those numbers will look like, and then that will hopefully help us define what the budget requirements are for next year in terms of what that provision looks like. And again, it's that mixed approach between both the private sector and indeed our own council-run nurseries. In terms of promoting any further, I mean, I think we do promote it reasonably well. I think most people are aware of their entitlements to the 1,140 hours of childcare, early learning and childcare. I'm more than happy to have further conversations offline about any other ways we can do that, because I think fundamentally we are seeking to get those young people into our nurseries, again, whether they're our own council-run ones or the private provider ones as well. Thank you.
Thanks for that, John. Julie, we've got Karen Bryden as well wishing to come in on that point for you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, it was just to say that, as indicated in the council plan and reported on, there is a 4-week social media campaign that's targeted at our 2-year-olds, and there is also a media and social media campaign at the point of enrolment for our 3-year-olds.
You okay with that, Julie? You want to come in with your second question?
Yes,
or?
thank you.
Okay, no worries.
So my second question was to do with 4.3, again on page 25, the primary school budget being overspent and the main factors that pressure on supply teaching costs, which have increased. And I'm just wondering what the breakdown is of staff absences. Are we seeing an increase of stress-related illnesses? Are we seeing an increase of people off with flu, COVID, because vaccinations were no longer available to council staff? I'm just wondering if that has impacted on here. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Julie. John, do you want to come in with that one?
Yeah, thank you. And it is a challenge for us in terms of both the budgetary pressure, which is clearly why this paper is in front of members this morning, but also in terms of the wellbeing of our staff. I don't have the detailed figures of the actual cause of absence. However, I would suggest that non-work related stress is actually the highest factor from my recollection of the last paper that I looked at. But again, we can provide that information through a detailed report for members if required after today's committee.
Just to support John in that, to make sure we provide the relevant information. Of course, the reasons for staff absence by directorate will be reported to Enabling and Customer Services Committee. So we'll make sure that that is shared with you too, Julie, because I recognise that you're not on that committee, but we'll certainly make sure that you have that information. Thank you.
Thanks, John. Thanks, Gillian. You okay with those answers, Gillian?
Yes, thank you.
On to number 3.
Last question, I promise, at the moment. I just wondered, it was to do with page 26, 4.9, where it talks about the increased expenditure within directorate schools associated with external third sector organisations. And I just wondered what those third sector organisations were and what service they're actually providing, and if we do have ability to provide that in-house rather than out to a third sector. Thank you.
Thanks, Julie. You, John, for this one again?
Yeah, I mean, just for clarity, that is the support that we continue to provide for the usual place. So that's the third sector that we're describing in the paper.
Thanks for that, John. You happy with that, Julie? Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks very much. Any other questions from members? Councillor Dashford.
Thanks, Chair. Just not a question really, but just to put on record and welcome the fact that the Directorate has managed to meet all its savings for 2025-26. I appreciate that's not been the case across all directorates, but it's good to see that this one has, so thank you. Thanks.
Thank you for that acknowledgement. It has not been an easy task.
Any other questions from members?
Hello, Chair. Councillor Young, could speak please in the chat. Hello?
Oh, sorry, Councillor Young, I was looking for it there. It doesn't seem to have come up, but go ahead with your question.
Thank you very much. On page 29, near the bottom, I think it's about 4 lines from the bottom, it says leisure facilities had an underspend of £200,000 this year. Now, for this set of accounts. Now, it's my understanding that if something goes wrong with the building or the plant, it's economy and resources, but staffing is the responsibility of this particular department. Now, as you know and are probably well aware, Castle Douglas swimming pools had a lot of problems, and quite often we get a notice to say Sorry, Castle Douglas pool is closed today because of staff absence. Now, I'm aware we're supposed to have a one council approach, and yet this seems to be typical of the response our community in Castle Douglas get when there's a problem with the pool. And it's been closed an awful lot more than it's been open during January. And it was brought to my attention that the pool at DG1 had a problem, and compare the notice that they sent out to the users. And if you'll give me time, I'll read it out. Unfortunately, due to unforeseen circumstances, the temperature in our leisure pool is currently too low to open for our first two sessions at 10 a.m. and 11:15 a.m. Our reception is currently trying to get in contact with everyone to organise another session or a refund. We will be monitoring the situation for our afternoon sessions and let everyone know if they're going ahead. We apologise for any inconvenience caused and thank you for your patience during this time. I mean, congratulations to whoever's in charge of communications at DG1, because that's an excellent update on the situation there. Sadly, we don't get that at Castle Douglas. With the pool being closed most of January, we still don't know if the people that pay a monthly fee to use the pool are going to get a refund. And yet DG1 communications are more or less saying, yes, we'll organise the refund. So firstly, why when there's an underspend, is there a shortage of staff? And secondly, if we're following a one council mantra, surely the communication should be of the same standard and containing the same amount of information. As you'll be well aware, I do feel that Castle Douglas swimming pool is very much the poor relation in leisure facilities in Dumfries and Galloway. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Young. We've got Harry Hay here in the council room, so do you want to go?
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, so absolutely agree that communication should be consistent across the region and across the service and directorate. We are indeed all one leisure and sport service in this instance, and we should ensure that the same Timmy's message is sent out as happens across the piece. I think the challenge we've got, as the member will be well aware, is that the condition and age of the facilities at CD are somewhat in contrast to the facilities we've got at DG1. And Councillor Young's quite right that during the month of January, the council really struggled, despite best endeavours, to get the necessary essential repairs done to the facility. I'm glad to say that the facility is now up and running and continues to be closely monitored by our colleagues in property, leisure, and of course any external contractor that we need to bring in. I think what we've found is that the availability of specialist contractors can be a challenge, and there are obviously very clear requirements for swimming pool temperature, water temperature, etc., depending on the nature of the activity that takes place. Where we have got a staffing call off, for example, that happens in terms of either sickness, absence, etc., every effort is made to try and identify an alternative member of staff to come in and cover the shift. And as members will be aware, again, there is absolutely a minimum number of required swimming pool staff when operating a facility. So obviously safety has got to come first in that instance. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Harry. Councillor Young, are you somewhat satisfied by that response?
Not really, to be honest, Chair. No mention has been made of refunds. I mean, the pool was shut for most of January. We had members of the community turning up at the swimming pool for a swimming session and being told at the door, oh, sorry, there's no swimming today. Did you not know the gym's open? So, but we've only got one member of staff on call. I mean, if you want to run down a facility, the council's going about it in the correct way. You know, we got notice that the upgrading of the pool, which should have happened starting in 2023, has been put back again and will now not be completed until 2029. So, I mean, this is a facility that was awarded £1.4 million under the Spend to Save scheme, and it's just been delayed and delayed. And to be honest, the people in Castle Douglas say, oh, Ice Bowl, there's more money getting thrown at facilities in Dumfries. Oh, education, there's more money getting thrown at the learning time. Meanwhile, Kakubria and Castle Douglas High Schools get very little budget spend. You know, there is a feeling here that we are very much the poor relation. And to be quite honest, it's not good enough, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Young, and I think it's something where we need to look at the communication situation with this, but yeah, no, thank you for your questions and your comments. Councillor Wilson.
Thanks, Chair. It's not really on this paper, it's probably on the back of what Councillor Young's saying, and I'm kind of, because obviously we just went through the, you know, our budget proposals were submitted this week, and obviously we've got like a number of leisure facilities were included in budget saving proposal templates, and I'm just wondering if it's worth doing a review of all our leisure facilities, you know, to see if we can maximise income anywhere, maybe look at the opening times and such like, if that would be okay, if we could do something like that. And just to reiterate, the communication for DG1 was really good. I had my girls booked in for swimming, and I did get a phone call and stuff to change. So that was good, thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Wilson. It's good to see that the communication was good in this instance. Harry, you want to come in here?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I mean, members will be aware that we've been to committee on a number of occasions with, particularly in relation to leisure and sport activity and facility operations. And it's really the nature of the service is that facility managers have got the autonomy to constantly review customer feedback, customer demand, etc., which I think is one of the reasons why this service has performed particularly well in terms of income targets that were set for this financial year, despite them going up from the last budget development process. But very happy to bring forward a specific report on leisure operations in terms of opening times, expenditure, income generation, other options for maximising income, etc. We're very happy to bring that forward, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Harry. Are you happy with that, Councillor Wilson? Thanks. Any other questions? No, we'll move to recommendations. Member are asked to note Education, Skills and Community Wellbeing Directorate 1 is projected to return a 282,000 underspend at the end of the financial year as reflected in Appendix 1, and 2 have fully achieved the 2025-26 savings targets as detailed in Appendix 2. So move to agenda item 5, the statutory consultation on Palnaki Primary School. Kevin Williamson is here, and we have Louise Ray as well and John Thin to assist members if they have any questions. Do you have anything to add to the report?
Thank you, Chair. No, there are no changes or new information for the report.
Okay, thank you. Can indulge me, the Chair, just a little second and ask if you could talk us through, sort of run us through the process to undertake this consultation, just so we can see all the levels, let's make sure everything was ticked and stuff. It's a really, really good paper, I want to say, so just interested to see the process that was undertaken. Thanks, Kevin.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, this report presents to members the findings of the statutory consultation on the proposal to close Palnaki Primary School and realign its catchment to WT Primary. The consultation process itself included a well-attended public meeting with 12 stakeholders. Stakeholders at that meeting did express regret about the decline in pupil numbers in the local area, but recognised that a decision regarding the future of the school was necessary. They were also keen to explore other uses for the school building if the decision is taken to close Palnaki Primary. The majority of the respondents to the online survey also supported the proposal, and HM inspectors confirmed that there would be educational benefits for children moving to WT Primary. So that and the other details are all part of the appendix, which you'll find in the report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that, Kevin. So I'll open to members for any questions. Oh, Vice Chair.
Yeah, I would just like to commend the team for the work they did. My intervention is really to ask folk to read through this if they've got any concerns about the statutory consultation and the closure of schools, or not for that. The team here have went through the whole process, and as it's set out here, it really explains how the process does cover all concerns, and everybody's got a chance to speak. And it's not limited to the number of pupils in the school. And I think it'll become ever more relevant going forward, looking at the school estate, that we as members and parents, we fully understand the process, and that our officials fully understand the process and the responsibilities. So I commend the team for the work that they're doing, and I would encourage all members to read through the process in this paper, because it's live. It demonstrates, better than looking at the regulations, this demonstrates how it's done. And there's no corners cut, and everybody's consulted. So commendations to you guys and the people in Palnaki that engage. So thanks, Tracy.
Thanks, Councillor Jamieson. Any other questions from members? Mr McGill.
I suppose the question's in relation to the 3 consultation papers that have been produced. I was wondering if officers would be able to give an update or identify if it has already been published. If so, I'll hold my hands up. But the strategy for depopulation for Dumfries and Galloway, this type of consultation and these types of papers obviously have an impact and play into that type of strategy. I was wondering, has that been published, or when was that being published?
I understand that the depopulation report was subject to a member's briefing and a member's seminar. Forgive me, I can't recall whether it has already been considered by members at Enabling Customer Services or Environment and Infrastructure Committee, or whether it is, but it is complete. It's been complete, and it has been the subject of a member discussion. Clearly, depopulation is a key factor that we are all aware of in Dumfries and Galloway, and we respond, as you can see from the school estate strategy, we have continued to respond to the falling numbers of pupils, and these school closures and consultations for school closure are key to, they're an important part to recognising that our demographics are changing. So in answer to your question, which I think is, do we take account of school closures as part of depopulation? Absolutely, that we do. It's all part of that. Obviously, we want more people to live and work in Dumfries and Galloway, and that's part of the current campaign. But we've also got a duty to ensure that our young people are learning in thriving environments. Thank you.
Thanks, Gillian. Vice Chair, you want to come in?
Yeah, I do. I think it would be helpful. At a previous recent committee, we presented a paper, a very, very good paper on rural schools, which again was objective. It was full of references, acknowledging the challenges to education, rural communities, transport. I would encourage folk to read that paper, because it covers a lot of the areas that this committee is very concerned about. And we are taking an overview, objective, reasonable research. And again, I commend the team for producing that paper. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Jameson. I've just been updated. Tracy just told me as well, Mr McGill, that there is a paper going to all the area committees, sort of localised depopulation paper, and a full paper going to full council on the 26th of March. So that will have all that details from that. Any other member questions, comments? Okay, we'll move to recommendations. Members are asked to, 1, note the content of the consultation report on the outcome of the statutory consultation relating to the proposal to discontinue education provision at Pulnaki Primary School as detailed in paragraphs 4.2 to 4.9 in an appendix. To agree to the closure of Pulnaki Primary School, having satisfied the requirements of the school's consultation, Scotland Act 210, and agree to realign the catchment area of Pulnaki Primary School to Dalbeattie Primary School as detailed in paragraph 410. So we move to agenda item number 6, and we have another statutory consultation, this time on Carshfairn Primary School and Nursery. We've got Louise Ray here for this one. Louise, you got anything to add to the paper?
And nothing further to add, thank you, Chair, but willing to take any questions.
And exactly the same process has been undertaken, Kevin has detailed?
That's correct. You know, following on from the statutory consultation process for Hutton Primary School, for St Ninian's Roman Catholic Primary School, and now Pulnaki and Carshfairn, we are you know, building that knowledge based around what works for our communities in line with following the statutory requirements, but also tailoring that for each community, ensuring that we do our due diligence and make sure their voices are heard.
Thanks for that, Louise. So, open to members' questions. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Chair. It's just on the, we've received an email today from a parent at Carshfairn, so they're not objecting to the school consultation. They are just asking about the community maybe taking over the school. I just wanted to check, I think it's once it's declared surplus that they can come forward with a kind of proposal for a community asset transfer or something like that. Thank you.
Yeah, but I'll move to Louise and she'll give you the exact comment.
So from, if members were at this point to agree to the closure of Carshfairn Primary School and Nursery, there's a period of time where it goes to ministerial call-in to ensure that there's no reason that it can't progress. Beyond that, at this committee, very much as per the next paper, education would declare the property surplus, and then it would follow through the process for disposal. What I will say is there is an active group in Carshfairn, the Carshfairn Learning and Development Committee, who already have approached us around taking on the building. They are well established, they are already a constituted group, so they are almost running in tandem with this process, and certainly the ward officer Ingrid Gemmell is aware of what they're doing and is there to support them through that process. So ordinarily that process would happen after the closure, but it's very much been running in tandem this time.
Thanks, Louise. You happy with that, Councillor Wilson? I'm taking it that your constituent is perhaps part of that group, or aware of it at least.
It was just an email that was sent this morning, but I think Hutton was similar when it was that their community group were already interested, so aye, thanks.
That's great, thanks. Any more questions? Okay, we move to recommendations. Members are asked to, 1, note the content of the consultation report on the outcome of the consultation relating to the proposal to discontinue education provision at Carshfairn Primary School and Nursery as detailed in paragraphs 4.2 to 4.9 and an appendix, and agree to realign the catchment area of Carshfairn Primary School and Nursery to Dalry Primary School and Nursery as detailed in paragraph 410, and agree to the closure of Carshfairn Primary School and Nursery, having satisfied the requirements of the school's consultation Scotland Act 210, as amended, as detailed in 411. So move to agenda item 7, surplus property, St Ninian's Roman Catholic Primary School, Newton Stewart. Again, we've got Louise here. Do you have anything to add to the report, Louise?
The only thing I'd like to add further to the report is we're aware that St Ninian's Roman Catholic Primary School sits on the same site as Penningham Primary School. What came out loud and clear through the preliminary requirement phase and through the statutory consultation was irrelevant of the future use of the building was to maintain the access onto the Penningham Primary School site. There are currently 3 access egress points, and 2 of those approach the site from the St Ninian's RC building. So it's that we have sight of that. We will take cognizance of that depending on what the future use happens to be.
Thank you, Louise. And can I maybe sort of ask on that, Has there ever been a requirement for Penningham to actually access the building as well and to keep the building? I mean, we're talking about we're making it surplus, but if there's, I believe Penningham's quite full. So has there ever been a request, or even looks like there's an interest in them keeping that building or accessing that building? So in turn, that would mean it would stay within Education Committee.
So we have discussed that through our own internal meetings. We've also involved the head teacher at Penningham Primary School around some of those discussions. What we know is that Penningham Primary School is relatively full. It has a large number of children that are that is not their catchment school, and currently is more than sufficiently sized to meet the needs of that community. It's an unusual building, is St Ninian's RC, and probably not one that we would hope or design in that manner for modern education. Totally lost my train of thought. So as it stands, there is space in Penningham Primary School across nearly all age groups. We are currently enrolling for August, and certainly there is capacity across Minigaff Primary School as well in Newton Stewart. So we have surplus capacity in that area. It is complicated. It is on the same site, but the school are not currently using it and have not used it during the period of time it's been moppled, nor have we had any requests from the school to use it. And in fact, they've got a set of keys as it is, but they've not used it.
That's great. Thanks very much, Louise. So any member questions? Councillor Ingalls.
Hi, good morning, Tracy. Good morning, members. I'm coming in a wee bit late here. I had somebody approach me in the office there and I missed the start of this. It was really a question round about the access from Princes Avenue and up past the library. There's a lot of kids dropped off there. Has that been covered?
I think you've possibly missed the opening around that, councillor, but yes, certainly that came out loud and clear through the process. That was many people's priority or concerns, I opened by saying that whatever the future of the building becomes, that we need to ensure that get those active routes onto the site that are not Auchendoon Road, because we know the pressures of that road, that we find a way to maintain, I guess, the security of the site and the access, particularly on foot by families coming in by those directions.
Okay, so I'm sorry if I'm going back over that old ground. As I say, I missed the first part of it, but it is really quite important. From Princes Avenue, there's a lot of children from that side of the town actually come through there and round past St Ninian's School, and it's quite a tight site. And then up from the library, there's a lot of people drop their kids off there and they walk up. So it's quite important that there is pedestrian access from both those sides. So, as I say, apologies if it's already been covered. Thank you.
No worries, Councillor Ingalls. You'll be satisfied to know that that access will be continued for. So that's good.
Thanks, Tracy.
Councillor Lowe.
Yeah, thank you and good morning, Chair. I'm aware that part of the provision for Penningham is possibly that some of the learning support is given within porter cabins. Are those really strong buildings that are going to last? Or is there any thought that the Old St Ninian School could actually make a good base? I just want to be sure that we're not missing any sort of possibilities, because porta cabins kind of buildings are maybe not going to last forever, whereas that's quite a sort of strong, secure building that we're currently discussing. Thanks.
Currently, there are technically two porta cabins on associated with Penningham Primary School. One is the nursery, that is a purpose-built modular construction building built by porta cabin, and it's there and it's certainly built to last. And the other one is that the old nursery building currently serves as a space for the current learning centre provision. I completely agree. Porta cabins are not designed to last, but no building lasts without investment, and we maintain that porta cabin as we would any other of our occupied buildings. It's one conversation we had with the head teacher, but there is, with the presumption of mainstream, with the, and whilst the building that the learning centre is in is external to the main building, it's not far away. we were quite clear, and the head teacher was quite clear, that for her to be able to manage a learning centre in a separate building that's away down the playground actually wasn't the most inclusive option for her school. You know, maybe in time there is a different solution for that site, but right here, right now, the provision on site remains in that porta cabin, and that's felt to be the most appropriate at this point in time.
Are you content with that, Councillor Lowe?
Yeah, thank you. Very clear answer.
Thank you, Louise. Any more questions from members? No, we'll move to recommendations. Members are asked to, 1, note that the Education, Skills and Community Wellbeing Directorate no longer has a requirement for St Ninian's Roman Catholic Primary School. 2, note the 5 policy intent themes contained within the Council's disposal and acquisitions policy, included as background papers to this report. Note the background, history and current position regarding St Ninian's Roman Catholic Primary School as detailed at paragraph 4.1 to 4.3. And 4, agree St Ninian's Roman Catholic Primary School, as noted at paragraphs 4.1 to 4.2 and shown in the appendix, is surplus to the requirements of the Education, Skills and Community Wellbeing Directorate and should now progress through the disposal process. Thanks, Louise, and thank you, members. Agenda item 8, devolved school management, DSM, scheme guidance, 3-yearly review. Now we have Roseanne Jarvis here to assist if members have any questions. Roseanne, do you have anything to add to the report? Sorry, I'll wait until you sit down before I ask you questions. Sorry.
Thanks, Chair. Nothing further to add. I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, thank you. Open to members, Councillor Lowe.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So there are various sources of funding available to head teachers which can be dealt with flexibly. So you've got devolved school management, they've got their PEF funding. Are we sure that all pupils are getting equal access to a full range of educational activities? So, for example, page 356, item 210, it says all other school expenditure to be met from school DSM budgets and including spending on the following. Is it may include or should include those items that are listed? Because one of those is page 357 under travel costs, pupil travel. So if DSM is flexible, we're aware of pockets of inequality between schools for some provisions, particularly visits off-site, which are key to a balanced education for all pupils. Now, often parent councils fill the gap with fundraising, but where that doesn't happen, are pupils missing out? This could lead to potential exclusion from core school activities, and I'm just concerned that all our pupils are getting the same whichever school they're in. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Lowe. Oh, John then is going to answer that.
Thank you, through yourself, Chair. Thanks, Councillor Lowe, for that question, which is a very interesting question because our statutory responsibility as a council is to discharge the function of DSM to schools, and the decisions that are made in terms of the spending of that funding is the responsibility of the schools themselves. Our role is to make sure that they spend within the guidelines that are available to them. Now, clearly, schools will make decisions based on their improvement priorities, what their main focus of that year is, and will allocate funding according to that, probably through the school improvement planning process. I do understand your question with regards to equity and equality, however, because we know that the budgets can be vastly different between some of the larger schools and some of our smaller schools. And we do understand that that is often a sort of tapestry of funding sources, whether that sometimes is external funding sources, it's through a very effective parent council, PTA, who are actively involved in raising funds to support particular things that the school are interested in doing, whether it's attending sporting events, cultural experiences or whatever. But again, that sits very much as a school-based decision, and that's what head teachers are responsible for through head teacher empowerment. So it is difficult for us to answer that in its entirety. We ensure that the funding is allocated, we ensure the funding is allocated through an agreed formula, and we ensure that that funding is actually spent on what it's being stated to be spent on. But in terms of the detail of how that funding is actually allocated within a school, that is the head teacher's responsibility. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Are you content with that response, Councillor Lowe?
So if we're dealing with sort of particular situations, is our advice that the parent needs to maybe go back to the school and actually look at what the money's been spent on, or ask for parent council minutes, or, you know, where discussions are? I'm just kind of wondering how a parent can like take a query forward.
In simple terms, yes. I think I would absolutely advise, if members are being asked those questions by constituents, then absolutely point them back to the conversation. The Parent Council do have a monitoring role as well in terms of the resource allocation and how the resources are spent within the school. That sits as part of the conversation around about the school improvement planning process, but very much it does sit with the school itself. And in secondary schools, I also understand that they have finance committees which are responsible for that oversight of the spend for the school.
Thank you, John. Are you okay with that, Councillor?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you. Julie Irvine?
Thank you, Chair. I've got 3 questions again. Do you want them one at a time? Okay, so the first one is to do with page 355, and it's to do with 2.9. So areas of expenditure included and not suitable for DSM. There's a bit that talks about repairs, maintenance, improvements, landlord responsibility. But then when you flip the page, it says property at 2.10 that's to be met through the school's DSM. Repairs and maintenance, tenant responsibility. And I wondered what the difference is between the two, because obviously repairs and maintenance is that replacing light bulbs in gym halls, which involve scaffolding, therefore excessive cost to a school. Is it the trim trails that are in schools? Is it, so it's, where does the responsibility end, is my question.
No, thank you for that. Oh, we have Lauren. Lauren's in the room, so would you like to address that, please, Lauren?
Thank you, Chair. The reality is there's quite a list of items that fall in either category, whether it's a landlord responsibility or a tenant responsibility. There is documentation which shows that the repairs team use on a daily process to deliver those repairs. In essence, the way I look at it is if you pick a building up and shake it, anything that falls out is tenant responsibility. Anything that stays within it, the wiring, the plumbing, the fixed furniture, those kind of things are landlord responsibilities. If the building has a leaking roof, it's a landlord responsibility. Tenant responsibilities tend to be things like you mentioned trim trails, they're absolutely school's responsibility. Decoration, carpet, furniture, minor small repairs, or if there's a repair required from a vandalism perspective, etc., they tend to fall within the school. The bigger, more costly things stay with the landlord, almost like a rented property, if you were to use that analogy as well. So hopefully that helps, but there is a defined list of what sits where.
Thanks, Lauren. Are you happy with that, Julie? Does it make it more clear?
Yes, that makes it clearer, thank you.
Right, question number 2.
Question number 2, it's just about terminology that's been used. So it's page 359. 3.8, where it talks about budget environments. There's a mention of rect time, but I thought that we were no longer using that terminology and it should be non-class contact time. It was just to get clarification on that, because I think it's been overtaken in the last few years.
Good spot, Julie. I'll just turn that to John.
I missed that, Julie, and I totally agree that needs to come out and be changed to non-class contact time. Thank you. We'll change that.
Thanks, John. Good spot, Julie. So, question 3.
Question 3 is to do with teaching staff absence budget. So it's on page 364, and it's 4.11, 4.12. So it says schools will cover staff absence for the first 5 days. So, and staff who remain absent beyond that from the 6 days it's covered centrally. and there's no allocation for support staff, and that's detailed on page 366. So how do schools internally cover these absences when class teachers are already full-time class committed? If you're lucky, you may have someone who's got management responsibility, but it's how is that covered internally when things are timetabled in such a way that everybody is doing maximum contact time? And it's just a little query around that, because it is quite stressful when you have a colleague who's off, and we try to be creative and we will merge classes where possible and things, but it isn't always possible to do, and I just wondered if someone could speak to that.
Right. The all-round details of that is a budget issue, but the details on how we're making it operational within our schools, Roseanne.
Thank you. So head teachers do have the devolved responsibility to work within their resources within their school. But as you said, at times that might be unmanageable because they may be class committed themselves. And that's where every school does have 2 days per FTE within their partial discretion budget, that head teachers can then use that within those first 5 days if needed to bring in supply staff.
You okay with that, Julie?
Yes, thank you. I'm not convinced it covers the level of staff absence we're seeing, and I think it's putting pressure on a system where we're already feeling quite a bit of pressure, and I appreciate it as a budget consideration as well, which is why I asked the questions earlier about staff absence. I can see it all connecting.
There's so many of these things are connected. When it comes to budget time, that was a budget decision, and things that quite often are budget decisions do just add on to different things, and they're all conjoined, so totally understand where you're coming from there. But it's an operational thing from then onwards. So, Councillor Joshua.
Thanks, Chair. One of the themes of the DSM is partnership working and such in order to empower head teachers in schools. So with this 3-year review, I suppose I'm just wondering, what are the schools telling us about the DSM? Is it working for them? What is their feedback at a head teacher level? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dashwa. Who would like to take this one?
Thank you. Yes, it was just to say that I have recently engaged with a number of head teachers. I've been going out to schools to do support visits, basically looking at the DSM compliance of the scheme, and they find it really helpful that it is basically a set of guidelines, their Bible that they refer to. It has everything within it that they do need to run their school with their finances. So they have found it very helpful and have asked that we continue with these support visits and possibly some targeted training for any new head teachers that are coming through, just to make sure that they are au fait with the guidelines and the support that's available.
Thank you, Roseanne. You happy with that, Councillor Dashwa? Okay, Councillor Stevenson.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm glad the subjects of budget was brought up, because this is one of the reasons why this is back here, and it's to do with the clerical staff that was taken as a budget saving. It's not something we put in our budget. So I pulled out the template that was used for the budget, and within it, it says, there's 2 points that I need to make. Within it, it says that in all cases where a school is over their allocated hours awaiting adjustment, staff in each school will be asked to provide support during vacancies and for specific pieces of work in other schools or the central team. So does that money then get passed back into the DSM from the central team if we're using their staff that they're paying for from their DSM budget? And also, because we didn't take any redundancies as a policy throughout the council, we're now sitting with an X amount of clerical staff within our schools that don't want to retire, are near retirement age and don't want to leave. So if we are reducing the amount of budget into the DSM based on the clerical staff formula, does that not mean our schools are just picking up that budget saving that was made? Because that's ultimately what it looks like, is that we've just pushed that budget saving back down to schools, and that's why these templates need to be much, much clearer in what gets said, because we didn't take it because we'd thought of that, but obviously that's what was put in two budgets that we're either going to go through. So who is paying for these staff? Thank you.
So my understanding from discussions with finance colleagues is that the budget saving has already been applied to the budget, and schools therefore do not pick up the difference in that funding. The schools have their allocation, and until there's any movement in staff, they're entitled to continue with the clerical formula that they have. And we're actually really well through the savings with the clerical budget template based on natural movement of staff. So schools are not having to pick up any of those costs themselves.
Thank you for that, Roseanne. That should be a bit more assuring. Councillor Stevenson, are you happy with that response?
Yeah, but again in these papers it said if the school didn't need to use the staff, then we would use them centrally for purposes, but they would remain within the school. So did the school then get extra funding for that particular member of staff? This is the bit I can't understand, is that, you know, if we're using them centrally but they're not needed within the school, who is paying for these staff? Because what I wouldn't like to see is that it's coming through the DSM budget and the school is then having to pick up a cost. Thank you.
So it absolutely doesn't come out of their DSM budget. If the school was over their revised allocation, that school can run as it is until there's any change. Or if, for example, a nearby school had somebody who was off on long-term sickness, or there was a vacancy that whilst that was being advertised, we could then draw on the resource that was technically over allocation during that time period. But then they would go back to their original school if, for example, they weren't required for sickness cover or vacancy cover. So it's definitely not down to the school DSM to pick that up.
You happy with that, Councillor Stevenson? Or are you still somewhat confused?
I'm happy with the response, because ultimately I don't want this passed on to schools as a save-in, so that's fine. But it still doesn't make sense to what the paper says, and I think that's why when we go through budget templates, they need to be as clear as absolutely possible when they're sent. Thank you.
No, I fully agree. I fully agree with you there. And it's an excellent question to ask to get clarity on something that's concerning. If it's concerning you, we need to get the answers in that. But no, I fully agree about the templates. Councillor Wilson.
No, it's just picking up from what Councillor Stevenson's asking. So once the staffing is sorted, is there a reduction in the DSM budget for schools? Okay.
No, there's no reduction in their DSM budget. All that would happen is their support staff allocation would be reduced. So if a school had a vacant post and they came to us to advertise, we could then only advertise at the reduced number of hours that's brought in line with the reduced clerical allocation that was agreed as part of the budget setting. But that doesn't affect their DSM budget at all.
Are you needing more clarity on that? Because
sorry, I don't know, it's maybe just the way I'm reading it, but it says here, get my glass, the formula in the secondary DSM, and this is about the technician hours, the formula in the secondary DSM scheme will be updated once the allocation is finalised. You know what I mean? So I think it's just not clear what the meaning of that is. I'm maybe not making sense.
So that piece there is because the technician reduction was taken as part of the budget savings as well last year, but not to be implemented until the following year. So I wasn't able to update the scheme with the specifics until that was agreed. But again, the allocation will be reduced to bring the technicians in line with the agreed savings. But again, that doesn't affect the school DSM. They don't technically pay for these members of staff. They're paid out of our central budget. It does not come out of their DSM balance that is devolved to head teachers.
I think that line there, Councillor Wilson, it's paid out of the central budget. I think that's, for me, that clarifies the concerns about the DSM.
I think that's what we were trying to get to. Thank you.
But thank you for all the answers, Roseanne. But yeah, any other questions? Oh, Julie, do you want back in?
Sorry, it was just a comment that John had made that links in with the information on page 375, 376 to do with school finance committees. It's not legal requirement to have a school finance committee, but it is seen as good practice. My question is, should a member of non-promoted staff not also be included in it? Because it looks as though you've got parents, you've got information from pupils coming, but you're not actually including your teaching staff. It's promoted staff. And I just wondered if that is an alteration that you would consider making.
Thank you, Julie. Roseanne?
I can certainly add that into the policy, because during our discussions with schools, the support visits that I've been out on, we're doing, although it's not a legal requirement for a finance committee, we are encouraging all schools to have finance committees. And in discussions, I have suggested that that be non-promoted, either teachers, but also non-teaching staff as well, because we need to have representation across the board. So certainly that has been part of my discussions with head teachers. So I will add that. I can add that into the scheme.
That's great, thank you.
No, that's good. If committee agrees that today, but I don't see any dissension. I don't see anybody saying otherwise. Any other comments, questions? Okay, we will move to recommendations. Members are asked to approve the updated Dumfries and Galloway devolved schools management schemes, primary, including nursery and secondary, as detailed in appendices 1 and 2. Note the updates made to the schemes as detailed in paragraphs 4.1. Note the updates to staffing allocations and the addition of specific learning centre budget allocations in Appendix 1, and agree to the publication of the updated Dumfries and Galloway devolved school management schemes and the council on the council website and as detailed in paragraph 4.3. Thank you, members, and thank you, Roseanne and John. So we move to agenda item 9, the Coastal Benefit Fund 26-27, round 7 arrangements. We've got Derek Hextall online here to assist if members have any questions. Derek, do you have anything to add to the papers?
Morning, Chair, morning, members. No, nothing to add to the report, Chair.
Thank you. Then I'll move to members. Councillor Stitt.
Thanks, Chair. It's on page 408 under 4.12. But the underspend 8,000 being returned. It says withdrawn delivered on the budget from previous year's accounting. Can I ask Derek, how many years does this go back, Derek? Because if we went back 2 or 3 years, I think we should personally calling it back on a yearly basis so that some application didn't get the grant because there's no money left, could maybe have got some funding.
Thanks, Councillor Stitt. Derek, do you have a response to that?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Thanks, Councillor Stitt. The majority of that funding is from last year's allocation, so we do monitor it in year. And as members will be aware, there was delegation to the Head of Thriving Communities to reallocate any underspends in year, which we have been able to do. There is an element of that £88,500, which is from a previous round, and it was through internal projects. So just the way our reconciliations have worked over through finance, that we've only just been made aware of, I think it's about £22,000, which has been underspent through internal projects. But the majority of that underspend is from last year's projects, Councillor Stitt.
That's fine, Chair.
Thanks, Derek. Thanks, Councillor Stitt. Any more questions for Derek? Councillor Dashford.
Yeah, thank you. The Appendix 2, the pilot for the project for the Coastal Benefit Fund, can we just get a sort of a verbal summary of what that is? Because I appreciate there's an appendix here, but if we could just hear on record what the change is exactly. Thank you.
Thanks. Over to you, Derek.
Thanks, Councillor Little. Thanks, Councillor Dashford. Yeah, so the proposal within the paper is to utilise some of the underspend that has been accrued in order to meet or to show willing to the Scottish Minister's aspiration to ensure that the budget is committed by the 31st of March. So there's an opportunity there to develop an online system for our grant application, and in doing so to improve the application process for our applicants, but also for our administrative staff and grants management staff. Digitising a lot of the processes, improving automation, because our current system is almost 100% manual. It generates a lot of paper, a lot of admin behind the scenes, a lot of duplication as well from across a number of teams. So when applications come in, there's a lot of manual processes that go along that. Some of the development work that we've been doing for the past couple of years around looking at improvements suggests that there are systems available that could really transform how we manage grants, reducing the risk from an audit and scrutiny perspective, increasing the information that's available to elected members effectively at the touch of a button, and also improving that sustainability and succession management for our applicants and ensuring that they get a better journey and a better experience through our grant systems, rather than trying to find that email where your monitoring information is, the manual updates that we have to provide around deadline dates for monitoring, allowing applicants to upload documents onto an online system rather than having to meet our email limits for documents and sending multiple documents, and then the manual processes for our staff who then have to save all of this information onto a spreadsheet, onto a SharePoint site, and then make it available. Very passionate about the online grant system, Chair, so I'll maybe leave it there, but if there's any specific questions, I'm happy to go into it in more detail.
Thanks, Derek. Are you okay with that, Councillor
Yeah, no,
Dashwood?
thanks for that, Derek. I can imagine with the volume of applications that we're receiving, there's probably a lot of potential in this just for streamlining our processes and making life easier for officers. And if successful, could this be applied to other funding pots that the council has, like common good funds? Could this be the way forward, perhaps, Derek?
Yep, through you, Chair. Absolutely, Councillor Dashwood, that would be the intention. We see a real benefit to the Coastal Fund, as you will see in the report before you today. It is a significant and it is quite a complex fund. So it's certainly our recommendation that we use the Coastal Fund to establish and pilot a system, but having in the back of our mind that absolutely this is scalable across various funds, not only within thriving communities, but potentially across the council. And you will see also included within the report, there is actually a corporate project to develop a corporate grant system. So that is something that we would be more than happy to feed back to elected members and hopefully have this as a council-wide platform potentially. But any platform that we look at through the pilot for the Coastal Fund would have, in there within the criteria that it has to be scalable across other funds, and certainly the common good funds, the area committee funds that you've spoken about, are absolutely on my radar as part of this process as well.
That's great. Thank you. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Dashford. Thanks, Derek. We seem to have a very laborious system at the moment, so to streamline that and make it less labour intensive and itself will be a huge saving on time, on people power and finances. So sounds great. Anyone else have any questions? Oh, Councillor Stevenson.
Yeah, just a point to make. Should we not be using the change fund to streamline the service as opposed to actually using the community benefit fund? Thank you.
Certainly something I'll take forward, Councillor Stevenson. I think it's a good point. Derek has clearly articulated the case very well today, and he certainly has expressed the opportunity that this would bring for other services. So that is certainly something we will take forward. Welcome Derek's insight as to what this can achieve for this particular fund and therefore what the benefits would be for others in terms of manpower and also, as you highlight, Derek's scrutiny and risk. Thank you.
I don't disagree with bringing in the system. It's just I think it should come from the change fund. Thank you.
As Gillian said, yeah, that can be an action to look into that. But at the moment we have an underspend, and I think it's a one-off opportunity to sort of start this immediately. But no, thanks for that. Any other questions from members? No, we will go to recommendations. Members are asked to note that the funding allocated from the Scottish Crown Estate to Dumfries and Galloway for 26-27 is £804,845.45. Note that in addition there remains £88,594.65 in underspend from previous years, giving the balance of £893,440.10. Agree to allocate £241,453.64, which is 30% towards internal coastal paths and harbour infrastructure projects, and the process as detailed in paragraph 411. Agree to allocate up to £48,000 from the available underspend to develop an online grant system pilot with the Coastal Benefit Fund as detailed in paragraphs 413 to 414. Subject to 2.3 and 2.4, agree to establish 2 community funding streams for round 7, with the remaining £603,986.46, and eligibility criteria and award values are outlined in paragraph 49 to 410. And agree the scoring and recommendation frameworks as set out in paragraphs 417 to 418, and agree the monitoring and reporting arrangements and timetable as set out in paragraphs 419 to 421. Thank you, Derek, and thank you, members. So we move to agenda item 10, and we have the De Vries and Galloway Event Strategy 26-27 events funding. We have Lee Seaton here to assist if members have any questions. Do you have anything to add to the report, Lee?
Thank you, Chair. Just one very minor one just to point to members. On page 427, which is Appendix 1, the recommendation for the Scottish Curling Championships, all the figures are correct. It does refer there to Scottish Curling Championships 2026. That should say 2027. The 2026 events are happening next week. They're already funded from this existing financial year. It's just a typo of the wrong year, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Lee. So over to members. Members, Councillor Stitt.
Thanks, Chair. It's on page 427. When you see some of what have been granted, there seems to be a kind of lack of diversity in events, because you go the way the Gralach and the British Gravel Championships, they're both more or less interlinked. And you see the likes of the South of Scotland Horse Trials on. I did attend the South of Scotland Horse Trials last year. It was an international event with 350 recipients, well attended. I just think, if depending on budget, Lee, is there any chance we keep re-looking how we advertise this? Because the crowd even turned out at that horse trials. It was a good crowd considering the weather. Like, and as I said, the Gralach and the British Gravel are interlinked to be the same types of events. Just a bit of...
Thank you, Councillor Stitt. So in terms of the advertising of it, this is from the Open Fund, which is advertised widely in terms of socials, website, etc. I think maybe the point I would stress here is that the recommendations before you, which obviously come through from the events partnership, so we get Event Scotland input, we get SSDA input, we get third sector D&G input, etc., etc. But if members are minded to go with these recommendations, anyone that's unsuccessful, I would offer that opportunity to meet with some council officers in terms of the application process, because the recommendations today reflect the scoring criteria that we've agreed as a council and how we've applied that in terms of economic impact, particularly social impact. So it's the applications that have got the biggest recommendations have been the strongest in that area, Councillor Stitt.
That's fine, but I still think some events could merit getting some financial support.
Thank you, Councillor Stitt. Thank you, Lee. Any more questions from members? Councillor Dashford.
Yeah, 4.8 refers to the vacancy in the council events officer position. Is there an update on that? Thanks.
Through you, Chair, thank you. Yes, so in the interim period, whilst our former colleague Ian Barr has retired from the council, I do have beside me colleague Struan Toner, who has been assisting in the events role on an interim basis. Struan has got experience in the Ice Hockey World Championship delivery. Now, we've deliberately only filled this on an interim basis as we await members' decisions in terms of budget setting and understanding what impact, if any, there may or may not be on major events budgets moving forward. Once we get past that date, Councillor, we're then able to go and proceed with the next level of recruitment on a more permanent basis. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Lee. And hello, Struan. It's really nice to put a face to a voice on the phone. So, any other members have questions? Councillor Marsh.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, a note on page 422 in table 2, the list of events there for funding in 26-27. What I don't see is any mention of the Tour de France. I recall that members were made aware that it's going to touch the region when it comes in 2027, and that the council would have to contribute a fairly substantial amount of money towards that. Why does that not appear here? And from which budget will that substantial sum need to come from? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Marsh. So, yeah, through you, Chair. So on page 422, table 2, those are our signature events that have gone through the signature event application process that our council and our strategy have recognised as the signature events, and they are funding allocations that this committee agreed in November. The reference to the Tour de France, which we have previously considered under exemption, however, that exemption has now moved on and it is now in the public domain in terms of national releases that the Tour de France does touch upon our region, approximately 13 kilometres to the east of our region coming through Canonbie, and that has been subject to national releases. The proposal that came before members previously was not to take allocation of funding from this particular events pot, but to look from resources that were available through underspends elsewhere in our council, and we'd be consulting with finance in terms of making an allocation for that for this event next year.
You happy with that, Councillor Marsh?
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you, Chair.
Any more questions from members? No, then we'll move to recommendations. Members are asked to agree the 5 grant awards totalling £56,500 from the Major Events Fund 26-27. Agree the 10 grant awards totalling £23,500 from the Regional Events Growth Fund 26-27. And agree to receive a report to a future meeting of this committee detailing the findings from the mid-term review of the Big Burn Supper Festival as detailed in paragraph 4.8. Thank you, gentlemen. Agenda item 11, community resiliency. We've got Ewan on. Oh, we've got Martin Ogilvie on the. I thought you're not Ewan on the. Online to assist members. Martin, do you have anything to add to the paper?
No, thank you, Chair, and just to apologise, Ewan is participating in some training today, so he's delegated upwards, and I'm standing in for Ewan.
Thank you, Martin. So, members have any questions? No. Well, you've had a lucky move there, Martin. So members are asked to consider and note the chronology of project management and the development of the new community resilience policy. To agree the new community resilience policy developed by the resilience team throughout 25-26 and its publishing to the wider communities. 3, to note the data contained within appendices 2 and 3. And 4, note the periodic reviews of the policy will take place as and when required and reported to this committee as appropriate, and that the performance indicators in relation to the community resilience recognition scheme will be embedded within the Thriving Communities business plan. Thank you, Martin. Agenda item 12, the Gaelic Language Plan 22-2027, update and next steps. Do we have Stephen Jack online? Oh, there you are, Stephen. Do you have anything
Sorry,
to...
Chair.
No,
Yeah.
you're all right. Do you have anything to add to the papers?
Nothing really, Chair. Just to highlight that every 5 years we are required to prepare a new Gaelic language plan. So we just want to make best use of time and use this year to do all the engagement, consultation and scope and work to make sure we're in a good place. And also just to highlight some of the Gaelic activity that's taken place across the region, particularly through our partner, Gaelic Dumgal. But happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. So I'll move to members. If anyone has any questions? No, nothing coming up. That's good, Stephen. So we'll just move to recommendations. Members are asked to, 1, consider the information contained within the monitoring report for 23 to 25. 2, agree the consultation mandate to commence the process of developing a new Gaelic language plan. And note the early interest from the voluntary group to work with Dumfries and Galloway Council to explore the opportunity stemming from the Scottish Languages Act 2025 to potentially designate areas of the region as having Gaelic linguistic significance under the criteria that parts of our region are historically connected to the use of Gaelic. So thank you, Stephen.
Thank you.
So we move to agenda item 13, early learning and childcare support. We have Karen Bryden and Hugh Smith are here to assist. Members, any questions? So I'll ask, do you have anything to add to the report?
Thank you, Chair. No, nothing further to add to the report, but happy to take questions.
Thank you. So over to members. Vice Chair.
Yeah, given there's no questions, I would like to thank the team for bringing this forward. It wasn't due till the end of March, but it's very helpful for it to come through ahead of time. It's a realignment programme, and it follows the theme of trying to make the management efficient. But and at the same time, as we've discussed many times, the theme is to get more people closer to the children and young people, and I think this is I'm pleased that the outcome of this review has come to that conclusion. As I say, it's a theme that we don't want to, we can't do without management, but this realignment makes perfect sense, and we can move some of that staff into early learning centres and primary schools. So I would commend the approach that's being taken through this review, and thanks for the review coming ahead of schedule, because it will have a little impact potentially on budget decisions, so it's helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair, for those comments. Julie, you want to come in?
Thank you, Chair. Questions around page 535. So I note that the early years team, they offer support to services. So that's the quality assurance side of things. Educational visitors are supporting staff with specific needs of children, but they also have a frontline role with parents and children and families, so they work directly with them. So it's quite a sizable cut in the number of educational visitors, which are frontline staff who deal with our very youngest children coming into settings. So my concern would be that if there's this level of cut to frontline staff who deal with that first point of contact, is this not going to harm already our additional support needs service? And if the quality assurance side of the team, from what I can read from the documentation, it's merging both teams, but there's a third group of teachers within those teams, and I'm not sure where they're sitting. So early learning and childcare has early level within it, but we also have play pedagogy teachers who work across early level, which is directly into primary 1, primary 2, because not all children reach the end of early level. So I'm not quite sure where they sit within this plan, and I have real concerns about the level of support children and families will get if this cut, I see it as a cut, were to go ahead. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Julie. So Karen, you want to take this? Or Karen?
Yep. Thank you, Julie. Yes, you've quite rightly identified that part of the work of the educational visitor is to support children and families. However, within our settings, you know, that role should predominantly sit with either the manager of the setting or the key worker, or whoever has that closest relationship with the family within the setting, and that's what this move is towards, that person has more. So there would still be that role for them with children and families, but the main link for children and families should be the identified member of staff within the setting that they attend. You identified the play pedagogy principal teachers. The play pedagogy principal teachers separate to both of these teams. They don't work exclusively with either of these teams, and they're not involved in this proposal.
Thanks, Karen. Julia, are you satisfied with that response?
I just have real concerns because our educational visitors tend to be specialised within specific additional needs for children. So if we are cutting the team so severely, who does your member of staff go to for that further advice? Because yes, we all have duties to be familiar and to learn about additional needs and to support children with additional needs, but there are points where you've done everything that you know and you need a point of further contact who's got that expertise that you don't necessarily have, or who can offer training to your setting for that expertise. And that's where my worry is in amongst this, is if we lose the expertise from the system, will we then see actually a drop in attainment? Will we see rising additional needs because needs aren't being met? That's my worry.
So your concern is about a proposed budget template, and if this was taken, how we would work with that? Yeah. Can you come back in that? If indeed that was part of a budget that come forward at the end of this month, how would we work with that? How would that work out?
I think in relation to the paper that we've presented today, there will be a reduction of educational visitors, but they will still have that role as being a point of contact for staff within settings to be able to reach out to for that support for specific individual children and young people.
Can I come back in? We're aware we've got increasing numbers of children with additional needs. The percentages are hiking up and up and up. So removing staff who support children with additional needs and their families and settings at this time, does it not seem a bit short-sighted in that we're trying to support children with additional needs to reduce those additional needs, to overcome barriers to learning, to help families overcome those barriers to learning? I know we've got very experienced staff in our nurseries, but the educational visitors are at that next level. So from my own previous experience, I know when I had reached a point where I was unsure where to go next, they were my first port of call. And the educational visitors are quite often the lead professional when you're having support plan meetings for children. So you're putting more of that workload back to nurseries who are already dealing with more children with additional needs. I just worry it's going to affect the whole system.
Thank you for that, Julie. That's now down to us as members to be considering that information there and to considering consequences, knock-on effect, as we were saying earlier on. There's a lot of templates, a lot of budget decisions have knock-on effects on other things, and they're things for us as members to be considering, and it's the operational part of the officers to make that work. But thank you very much for your comments. They're well made and they've been taken on board, absolutely. So thank you for that. Councillor Wilson.
No, it's just, I totally agree with what Julie's saying actually, and I get that this will only go forward if it's contained in the budget that goes through, but are we not just putting more on our nursery staff who are already, well, as Julie says, there's so many kids with needs, and we aren't getting it right for every child. So I really have concerns about the support that the nursery staff would have if this was to go forward. So I really would. Thank you.
Are you saying you'd have concerns if this paper went forward, or if indeed it was part of a budget that went through, with that template that we're talking about?
Well, we're only being asked to know the review, so no, like, we couldn't note it. I would have concerns if it was taken forward as a budget saving, given all Julie said. And I know myself, it's not that long ago since my youngest has went to nursery. The staff, they do a lot of work, and they are trying to meet the needs of every child. But I just think that the level of need that there is within our children, I don't know how they can be expected to manage that without the additional support that these people give, if that makes sense. Thank you.
No, thanks, Councillor Wilson, and I don't disagree with you at all, but these are considerations that we were to make when we submitted our budget proposal. So, Hugh wishes to come in on this.
Thank you, Chair. I suppose that just to offer some reassurance, this is a different model. We are focusing the attention on our our nurseries, early learning and childcare providers, because we know that's where most of our children are going. And the individual approach of education visitors is an excellent model, but actually the demand that we've just heard about is outstripping that capacity. This is a different approach. This is building by using the programs that are outlined in the report, which have been tested over the last 18 months by our colleagues and are actually improving outcomes and improving experiences for children. So I suppose it is about to offer some reassurance that this is a different model. So we're not looking to continue with the old model of education visitors will be working with lots of individual children. They're using the models that they've developed alongside the early years team to build the capacity of our staff in our nurseries.
Thank you for that, Hugh. I think, Vice Chair, did you want to come in here?
Hugh's kind of got ahead of me there. I totally agree. As a long-standing advocate of more resources going into ESN, I totally understand the concerns and from Julie. I'm looking at my computer, so I don't have a page on this, but under the heading Meeting the Needs of Learners, we have bullet point ESN visits. This is a visit each year. You'll see setting across the authority to observe the level of need across the setting, offering strategies and the signpost the most appropriate programme to ensure the ELC is getting it right. The right support at the right time that will enhance practice, develop skills and understanding of children with additional needs. So I think we need to maybe separate it from the budget template and the realignment, which should give, and I'm hopeful that we can take out your word that the staff will be moved, the early learning centres and primary schools to support ESN needs. But the paper itself, I think, it's a move in the right direction, accepting the fact that ESN is under pressure and specialists are obviously required as and when.
Thank you, Vice Chair. And if any members wanted to follow, that was page 534, because I think, George, you've got, on the laptop, it's not really got the pages. So any other questions for Hugh and Karen? Oh, Councillor Marsh.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just to echo the comments of Julie and also Councillor Wilson, when looking at the paper as a whole, I would suggest that it points towards an increasing pressure within the classroom with the increasing trend of children requiring extra additional help. Within the paper, it talks about an onus on the staff on the front line having to be retrained to be able to accommodate and respond how they will need to. But my question really is, at what point are they going to have the time? You know, without significant investment into protected time, non-contact time, where are they going to find the time to partake in that training that the paper suggesting will alleviate the pressure? And also, in addition to that, what about the staff themselves, the pressure and the stress and the well-being of the staff in these situations? It all reads and paints a fairly worrying picture, in my opinion.
Do you want to come in, Karen?
Yes, thank you, Councillor Marsh. In relation to your question around training, certainly that there is time built within contractual arrangements for training, as well as inset days, etc., which are aside for training.
Thank you. You okay with that, Councillor Marsh?
Oh, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I suppose I will have to be for the time being, but I just feel that, again, to echo Julie's comments, the demand is rising, and I don't think reducing the number of people we have on the ground, on the front line, is the right way forward. So I would suggest that come budget time, we'll see some suggestions for improvement and additional staff being put on the ground, and that would hopefully go some way to relieve the pressures that staff are currently facing.
Thank you, Councillor Marsh. Julie, you want back in? Is it on the paper or the template? Is it on the paper yet?
It's on a question of something Hugh had said.
Okay, no problem.
So Hugh had said that most children are in the nurseries, but the earlier paper was saying we've got quite a big underspend in nursery and we've got children not taking up places. So my understanding was the educational visitors worked with children who weren't necessarily in nursery as well, along with the health visiting team. Is that no longer the case?
Chair, we have statutory responsibilities for children with disabilities from birth. In terms of education responsibilities, we generally discharge that through the provision of education visitors. The service, the new service will have to, and will have that capacity. But again, we would always wish and try to encourage parents to use the opportunities of early learning and childcare because of the good start it will give their children.
Thank you, Hugh. Any other members? Okay, we'll move to recommendations. Members are asked to note the detail of the internal service review of early learning and childcare support, which will see the early years team, Appendix 1, early years team roles and remits, and the educational visitor team, Appendix 2, educational visitor team roles and remits, come together with the creation of one team, the early years improvement and inclusion team. Appendix 3, revised early year structure, roles and remits, providing support to early years settings, children and their families. This model would see 4 early years officers redeployed into early years settings and 5.2 FTE educational visitors redeployed as additional support to learners, teachers in primary. Thank you, Karen and Hugh. So we move to agenda item 14, the digital school strategy. We've got Rachel Williams here to assist if members have any questions, and Alison Chambers online, and
Jamie Farquhar.
And Jamie Farquhar from Stranraer Academy. Welcome, Jamie. Do you have anything to add to the papers, anyone?
Thank you, Chair. Just to add that the Council Digital Strategy is being taken to the Enabling and Customer Services Committee in March.
Thank you, Rachel. So I'll open to members. Councillor Dashford.
Thank you. I notice we've got the head teacher of Stranraer Academy here, so just I suppose asking the head teacher what the current situation is in Stranraer Academy, if you can just speak to that. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Dashford. Nice to see you.
The policy in Stranraer Academy is about a year in standing and relatively well established now. So we essentially mirror what I would call the Dutch system of no to mobile phones unless it's educationally prudent. So phones are essentially not allowed in classes. We work on a see it, hear it, lose it approach, which means that the phone is confiscated by the member of teaching staff, goes down to the school office, and then we ask parents to come and collect that mobile device at the end of the school day. Young people are allowed to use their phones freely at break and lunch and before and after school. And when we deem it to be educationally pertinent, the member of staff can tell the young people that they're allowed to access their phones and use it for various purposes. As I say, that policy has been in place for about a year now. Works well. Like everything, we need to refresh it every now and again and ensure consistency. But we've fundamentally got buy-in both from our young people and from our community, which is really important. Indeed, more often than not, we get parents not rushing in to collect the mobile device at the end of the day, and they perhaps leave it with us for a bit longer, which we're happy to encourage. We confiscate on average on average about 3 phones a day, certainly less than 5 in a school of 985 pupils. So what we've achieved is we have significantly reduced the distraction element, certainly within lessons. We've done so in collaboration with our community. It's been relatively painless, and we find it to be very effective. Anecdotally, my teachers tell me that the amount of time they have to invest in managing phone use has decreased markedly. Not zero, that would be naive, but decreased markedly. So we're pretty happy with our approach at the moment. Glad to discuss the relative values of that and any potential tightening across Dumfries and Galway, but that's our perspective through in Stranraer.
Yeah, no, thanks for that, Jamie. I suppose what you said about buy-in there, I think that's probably critical, and I would urge members when we are looking at setting any strategy that we do have community buy-in with pupils as well, as you mentioned. So thank you for that. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Dashford. Thank you, Jamie, for that. Councillor Stevenson.
Yes, thank you. Obviously, this was my motion that came forward. There is some things that I feel are missing from this, missing from the report in general. I know Jenny Goldruth came out and the government's got their guidance on mobile phones, but she also came out and said our national guidance on mobile phones make it clear that we support full bans in schools. So this is something that our schools should actually be looking at fully. Does it matter who's in Westminster? They're going to support a full ban on phones. I know Kemi Badenoch came out and said it the other day as well. But I do know that Stranraer and Dalbeattie are two of our secondary schools that have a mobile phone ban. And we've heard more so from Dalbeattie because it's closer, that there's just a completely different environment within the school when those phones are no longer there. So what I would encourage the Education Department is to pull forward the bring your own device policy, because it's not fair for us to say an outright ban, which is what ultimately we want, until we've sorted out that bring your own device policy where we're not having to rely on them having their phones, because I don't believe that we would have a one-to-one device policy. The one question I do have within the paper is, do we actually block social media from our Wi-Fi within schools? Because that is one of the biggest drivers for, doom scrolling, taking pictures, antisocial behaviour and things. And then also when I was looking through the digital strategy for adult learners, and some of that in there includes Wellbeing, some of the timings of them, they're on 10 to 12, 12:30 to 2:30. If you're a working parent, how are you going to that? It's just not, it's not possible. Or if you're somebody within a job that's wanting to progress themselves, how do you attend any of those when you're working 9 to 5, Monday to Friday? So that's definitely something I think we need to look at as a time. And the one thing I did not see within the strategy, and I know it already happened, so surprised not to see it, is that we have school police officers who actually have sessions within schools to show the dangers of social media, mobile phone use, etc. And they do it not just with the pupils, but the parents as well, but that's not actually included in the strategy. Now, we're paying for these police officers, so why are we not utilising that and ensuring that it's rolled out through the secondary schools and their feeder primary schools? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Stevenson. And I think there were 5 elements to your points which I want just to separate out, and I think they're all really key. And that was part of the strength of bringing this together, because I know you were keen within your notice of motion to look at an overarching strategy and making sure we could see the connections between whether it be cyber security or digital safeguarding, bring your own device, the budget implications of that, parental responsibility for social media registration. So there's a lot in this, and I recognise that we perhaps haven't ticked absolutely every box, but we are working towards that. First thing I'd like to say, and thank you to Mr Farquhar for coming over today, in that giving the Stranraer Academy perspective, which is the template which we built on through our local negotiating committee for teacher agreements, our head teacher strategy groups, etc. But all of our secondary schools have similar policies or processes. So I have a list here, and we can certainly share that with members. But whether they refer to it as see it, hear it, lose it, or out of sight, or only with permission, or silent and stored, teacher discretion, all schools have an arrangement and a process in place, and I can certainly provide that for members' oversight if that is helpful. The question regarding blocking of social media and the costings for bring your own device, maybe I could ask Lauren to give an overview as you're responsible for schools infrastructure, and then we'll go back to Rachel to look at some of the work that we're planning to do with regards to the curriculum. Thank you.
Thank you, Gillian. In regards to blocking of sites, we have a filtering system that absolutely gives us that flexibility to switch on and off. There are sometimes occasions to allow permission through for particular subjects at particular points in time. However, what I would add is that that doesn't allow us to block mobile data to mobile phones that are through their own contracts, so there is still absolutely that ability. Costings are very nuanced. And difficult to pin down depending on which direction we would want to take. There's been some work recently in the public eye around Fife and the Transforming Learning Journey, which is looking at providing iPads across the cohort of P6 to S6 pupils, which is about 35,000 devices, so about twice the size of our estate. That's a £50 million investment over a 10-year period, with about £13 to £16 million up front for a hardware purchase. Now that's one direction. We have a number of iPads in our devices, but that's not our predominant infrastructure that we use. If we were to stick with a Microsoft platform, those costs would be significantly less. Just very, very crudely, and I was just doing the calculations when I was sitting in the background there, we have around 18,000 users out there. There's about £6–7 million worth of computer devices that we would need to have, but it's all the stuff that sits in the background. It's all the wireless access points that they need to go back to. It's all the servers they connect to, all the controllers, all the licensing that's sit behind it. So conservatively, I think you'd be looking at maybe, on a Microsoft solution, maybe £2–3 million worth of annual revenue recurring costs to sit behind it, but probably with an £8 million, £9 million level of capital investment to get it to a point where that could be operational. But a caveat with the fact that they're just quick calculations made just now in that area.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Stevenson. Just to pick up on the point about how schools work with their school police officers, you're absolutely correct that that is a big part of what schools do, and also working with the NHS. And so on page 580, within the appendix where it says family and community engagement, there is a short statement that just says that schools regularly work with their partners, including the police and the NHS, to give advice and support to children, young people and families around the use of social media and cyber resilience. And then each school approaches this topic in a bespoke way, depending upon the specific issues and needs within their school community. So really that's just to outline the fact that we do work with our school community officers, and they do provide that resource, but it is done in a bespoke way. It's not on a rolling programme as such, when schools feel the need to bring them in to have those conversations, and that is what happens. So just to outline that. In terms of the lifelong learning, I completely understand what you're saying. For working parents, those sessions are really difficult to attend. And I think it's that being able to work with our lifelong learning service to identify what it is that working parents might want, and then to work out the best way to bring that through. Schools do work in terms of family learning. Very often that is driven by the needs of the curriculum, such as literacy or numeracy programs, and very often that happens a lot in our primary schools, where parents are encouraged to come in and work with teachers and their children on a specific piece of learning. So I think if there's something specific around digital that we could look at providing, then I think that's a further discussion to be had.
You want to come back in, Paula?
Oh, yeah, thank you, Chair. And I think that's one of the points I'm trying to make, and one of the points I was trying to make bringing forward that motion was that it's not consistent across the board. And that's part of what the problem is that we need a consistent approach across Dumfries and Galloway to be delivered bespoke by our head teachers. But we need to set the tone, so we do, and that's one of the ways to do it was to bring this motion forward and put it within a digital strategy. And again, ensure that it doesn't matter what school you go to, you've got the same policy in place for mobile phone use. So it shouldn't be that if you go to one school, it's slightly different to another. It should be as soon as a child moves school, if that was the case, as an example, the policy would still be exactly the same, because we're setting the tone of, no, we don't really want you to have a mobile phone in school, you don't need one, and we shouldn't be promoting it either as a council. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stevenson. There's no question here, that was just comments, wasn't it? Thank you. Julie, you want to know?
Thank you, Chair. It was really just a comment on, obviously I'm primary based, so it was to say primary schools tend to have a no phone policy as well. So children are asked if they're bringing one to school, and we understand why in today's age you may need a phone to come to school, because some children are doing bus journeys. We no longer have the little village school open and you walk a couple of streets. So lots of parents do buy children mobile devices for safety. But from a primary teacher perspective, it's far more important that parents use the parental controls and settings on them. And that's where, when we do have issues in school, it tends to be because parents haven't put those on, and children, because of the bring your own device access, have been able to access things they shouldn't, but it's because their own mobile phones have not been set up correctly. So the devices we use within school, so for example, we use iPads, we use laptops, we use PCs. The children are doing things like SumDog, which is a maths program that helps them learn their maths, revisit concepts. We are teaching them touch typing skills. Children are learning how to write emails, send emails, all within the GLOW system. But as Lauren was saying, that's covered by the security we have in school. So if a child comes in and tries to access Facebook, for example, they're not going to be able to get on that. If they try and access decidedly dodgy websites, they can't access them, and it's normally flagged up by the tech team who keep an eye on these things, and we get oh, somebody's tried to access this. So from a teacher's perspective, it's safe provided parents have put on the parental checks that they need to do. It's not a teacher's job to do that for children bringing in phones. So my own school, for example, have the policy where the phone is switched off at the start of the school day, left at the office, collected at the end of the school day. Therefore, there's no risk. And that works in my school for my setting. But it's very individualised, because some schools use QR codes for follow-up work on literacy, where children scan a QR code, listen to a story. So they do need access to digital devices for those types of things. Sorry, it was more a comment than a question.
No, it's from your perspective from within the school, it's good to hear, you know, how it works in the schools. Maybe this is a call for maybe some form of crib sheet for parents and carers to know how to switch these things off and to make sure that these things are happening, something that goes out to all, you know, all parents and carers to make sure that this is done before they come into school. Because a lot of people won't be actually even be aware that you can do this, or it is a necessity.
And I think that's part of it. We've had the community policing team in and run sessions for parents, and the number of parents who didn't realise you can put controls on through Microsoft, you can put controls on through your phone provider, was amazing. And as a parent, my poor children were, you know, they had limited screen time. They also couldn't access things that weren't age appropriate. So, and they also have a tracker on so I can find them.
Yeah, 2 of my 3 children are still at home, and all the securities are still on in the house, and it drives them nuts that they can't get access to things they need, because that's been there since they were, you know, a lot younger. But that's just a comment, not, but I appreciate those comments. Mr. McGill, you want to come in now?
Yeah, thank you. It's a comment on the borders and 3 questions to start with. Lauren has outlined Fife as a potential option that has been detailed within the very detailed report. I was just going to highlight that Fife, Glasgow, Edinburgh, Scottish Borders, 18 million to roll out devices, tablets, iPads, from P4 straight through to S6. Everybody has their own. Massive scandal, front page of the Scotsman, on the access that young children, as young as P4, stuff going through the courts in Edinburgh at the moment around the access. There is no silver bullet to this. Children will be able to get round that level of access, and have done, and have been scarred. The medical, or the Academy of Medical Professionals, or Royal Academy of Medical Colleges, have already announced a medical public health emergency on this across the UK. The officer has detailed 31 pages in the direction that we are asking councillors to vote on, heading further towards digital devices and screens. This is not just about smartphones. This is about screens and the direction of travel, which contrasts Northern Ireland, the whole of England, 60 other countries, including a rollback in Denmark, Australia, parts of Asia, France, Spain, and I can go on and on and on. We do not need more devices in our schools. We need better use of books. We need better engagement all across the school. So that would be my comment as far as looking for an option that isn't smartphones. A consistent approach, I wanted to ask, we're talking about consistency. Are we seeing that consistency across the region when it comes to smartphones? Given the postcode lottery that exists across Scotland, have we managed to figure that out so everyone's doing the same? Or are we in a position where we have 16 or 15 different policies in 15 different schools, some seeing it enhances education and learning? It's the first sentence on a policy. I was wondering if you could comment on that.
Yes, thank you. So we do indeed have different policies for our different schools. Each school, the head teacher is empowered to make their own decisions and to bring with them their school communities and their families and their pupils along with that decision making. So every single one of our secondary schools does indeed have their own policy, which they are, and head teachers, as I said, are empowered to make those decisions. In terms of looking at all of our policies, we have some key themes from all of our policies. So in our secondary schools, the following themes are consistent across the school mobile phone policy. So firstly, restriction during class time. Secondly, controlled or restricted use during social times. There are restrictions around use in corridors and movement zones. There are clear processes for confiscation. We discuss privacy and safeguarding expectations, emergency contact procedures, and reasonable adjustments for young people. So those are the common themes across all of the policies in our secondary schools. But you are quite right. Every head teacher is empowered to make the decisions that are right for their school and their community, and to work with their school and their community. And we will support schools in order to make sure that they have a strong and robust mobile phone policy that meets the needs of their communities.
Thank you, Rachel. That answer your question, Mr. McGill?
Yeah, thank you. How much time are students in these environments spending on screens per day across the authority?
I can take that, Chair Pure. I don't have the research evidence, certainly not specific to Stranraer, to give you hours and minutes. I would suspect a lot less than you might think. I think the predominance of learning and teaching, as Mr McGill describes it, is jotters, it's still textbooks, it's a teacher in front of a class, albeit on a Promethean smart board, granted, but most of our education still occurs in classrooms in a manner that you would all recognise from your own school experience.
Would you like to come in just on that?
It was a question for the head teacher of Stranraer. If the students require their phones during the day, even if it's been confiscated, what do you do? So, like, for example, they need to pay for meals, and if the parents are unable to pick it up, but the kids require the phones after school, then what do you do?
Yeah, thank you for that question. I think that question is really pertinent because it speaks to the challenge of the absolute reasonable quest for consistency and the realities of managing school buildings with tens and hundreds of young people. So the direct answer to your question is we have really good relationships with our young people, and if a young person comes to us and says, "Sir, I need my phone to pay for my lunch contactlessly," they'll be given that phone for lunchtime on the condition that they return it promptly back to the office. They do so. We've never had an issue with that. Equally, we'll often get parents phoning in, especially in the Stranraer context. Our parents can live, 3/4 of an hour away in terms of it's not just an easy thing to jump into a car and necessarily upset the family planning, younger siblings at primary school, etc. Again, on a case-by-case basis, we'll be reasonable about that. We will have that conversation if a young person's phone use is becoming problematic, and we've had to use this discretion on a number of occasions. Of course, we'll have that conversation with both them and their parents. But the strength of any school system that works effectively is because the core of the provision is established and works well. It allows us that flexibility to be human and deal with issues on a case-by-case basis.
Thank you. You happy with that response? Vice?
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting, the discussion, and I'm really pleased we're having it because it is something that it's quite controversial, and there's pros and cons. My first point is this is looking at the digital strategy. It's not just mobile phones we're talking about, although it is a hot topic at the moment, and I totally appreciate that. I'm still looking at the evidence. I'm still listening to folk on the pros and cons. My daughter's a secondary school teacher, and she works in Edinburgh, and she's got iPads, and it works. But they've still got mobile phones, and they put them in pockets. 2.4 agree for officers to work with schools, children, and young people to develop a comprehensive set of guardrails for mobile phones use, digital technology, and artificial intelligence. Now, artificial intelligence is a huge issue, massive, and we're not even touching on it. And we can't ignore it, because my two children have gone through university. My son's doing a master's, and he got punished for not ticking a box to say he did not use artificial intelligence. So this is a massive subject, and we need to look at it objectively, looking at listening to the experts, listening to different opinions. But I think it's a really good paper because it acknowledges all these things. My other comment really is on devolved. We talked about devolved school management, and we talked about different schools having different needs. Some work in some schools, some work in others. We've got a different socioeconomic situation in a lot of schools. And I think we need to trust in the head teachers, but also the parents and the young people. And we need to take all that into consideration before we go into any big judgments. And it may be that we ban all mobile phones. It's one of the options that we must consider. But there's many other options that we can be looking at, and obviously Stranraer Academy have made a good stab at it. So my plea is that we look at 2.4 and agree to this review consultation, and we watch the politics, because it may be imposed upon us and we can't do anything else. And then the financial implications come, because we can't have our children in Scotland disadvantaged because we don't have the kit. So I would urge that we look at this, all of us members, officials, and we look at the wider aspect. We cannot deny progress, but we just need to be aware of the potential implications, both positive and negative. So I would urge that we agree with this policy and accept all the opinions across the board, and then have a rational discussion about it. I'm still in favour of head teachers and individual schools having a degree of flexibility, but it may be that flexibility needs to be standardised to a certain extent. But I would urge that we don't listen too hard to overly biased opinions and prejudge anything before we really look at this, because it's one of the most important things in education and in young people's lives that we must address rationally. Thanks for the space.
Thank you, Councillor Jamieson. I think, Greg, you wish to come in now?
Thank you. I just want to say before I start, it's more of a comment rather than a question. I'm not speaking on behalf of either the Scottish Youth Parliament or the Dumfries and Galloway Youth Council. This is my personal stance on this. I think from a young person's point of view, it's very easy for adults to call for a phone ban or come to a judgment about this situation when they're not the ones being educated in today's school system. Banning phones won't stop cyberbullying. It's going to put a time limit on when it can happen. And let's be honest, bullying doesn't start or end with a screen. A lot of it happens face to face, and a phone ban will not change that. Phones also play a real role in our learning. School tech isn't always reliable, and sometimes our phones are the only way to research, revise, or access work quickly. Taking them away ignores how modern students actually study. I'm not saying we should be able to use our phones whenever we want. I'm saying the issue is far bigger than a simple phone ban. If adults want real solutions, they need to work with young people, not make decisions for us. A balanced, realistic approach will do far more than an outright ban ever could. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Greg. And it's just as Councillor Jimson said, this is multi-layered, there's all different. We need to address how the young people feel about this. And I know that the Scottish Youth Parliament had a vote in 93% against the ban. And the Youth Council had a meeting and they agreed a motion to carry out consultation over the next 4 to 5 months. So we need to wait till that kind of consultation. Nationally, we've got the Children's Commissioner is currently reviewing the position. We need to wait till we have reviews, we have information coming back from all the different layers. Don't disagree with a lot that's been said from absolutely everyone, but it is multi-layered and it's not just a one-size-fits-all. So I agree with Councillor Jameson, it's about laying it in the hands of all these different reviews, consultations, and get all the 100% of the information back. So I think it's Councillor Marsh, no, wait a minute, Councillor Young first, sorry, and then Councillor Marsh.
Thank you, Chair. Very interesting discussion we're having here. But as your Vice Chair had said, we're concentrating mainly on mobile phones rather than digital devices. And personally, I think the biggest threat to education at the moment is artificial intelligence. Chat GTP, I think is the main one. You know, you can say to it, Chat, could you please write me an essay that a 15-year-old would write on the French Revolution? And do it's done for you. I was interested to know that somebody had got a wee bit of a row for not ticking the box to say they haven't used AI, but as well as mobile phones, I think we're going to have policies very shortly on the use of AI in schools. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Young. And agree again, don't disagree with anything that anyone said. Councillor Marsh.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, and thank you for this paper. I think this is an extremely difficult subject. Clearly, we cannot stand in the way of progress. Clearly, the ways in which we teach our children, especially even from my time at school, I don't think I'm old, but clearly since my time, things have moved on dramatically. We can't ignore the differences in different ways in which children are now taught. We do have to move forward with the times. However, I am really nervous about how we implement this and how we take this forward in schools. The evidence and research of the damage that social media and screen time has on young children is out there for everyone to see and read. It can have a really negative, detrimental effect on the lives, how your children's brains are formed in early years. So I think it's very, very important that we bring this back to committee at the soonest opportunity to discuss and the safeguards that are going to be put in place for this BYOD policy. Because if it is going to be a device that's brought into school and we are encouraging this to happen, it probably is going to be a smartphone as opposed to a tablet. So we need to make sure these safeguards are absolutely on point. In relation to page 517 and the Stranraer Academy approach, this clearly is an exemplar. I think I'd like to ask Jamie, it's only been a year in fruition, he says, and did he say that it was only maybe 3 devices a day, or was it 3 devices a week that had to be taken to the office and locked away? What was that like at the start, and how long did that take to kind of take hold and for students to realise that this is what's going to happen now? Because clearly it is now working very, very effectively. Why can't we roll this out across our schools in the region as the exemplar and put that in as a policy? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Marsh, Chair. It was the 3 a day, I would say would be our average. We have peaks and troughs. We had a day recently where my admin assistant notified me that we were on number 10. So we do have days when there's more, but again, that's a tiny percentage of the young people in the school. So the compliance, Councillor Marsh, I think you talked to there, the collaboration, the agreement from our young people is there. Young people in this room exemplify it. They're sensible. They understand that we are helping them. They understand the distractive power of the social media aspects of their phone. Again, I would differentiate between the mobile device and some of the apps that are available to the young people. I think that's an important distinction. But therefore, working with our community, we did the legwork. So we really did the consultation. We had the communication with our young people and their parents. So the rolling out of the policy gave me some sleepless nights, if I'm honest, but in actuality was entirely painless, and the reduction in phone use happened within a week. It was instantaneous. The community were really on board with us, and as I previously mentioned, we get support from the vast majority of our parents beyond the policy. They're absolutely on board with what we're trying to do in looking after our young people. I would just add, while I've got the chance, I think Greg, sorry if I've got the name right, Greg's point before was really, really important about the predominance of harm. So the harms that we're all concerned about here today are real. We deal with them in schools every day, but the predominance of those harms happen in bedrooms, not classrooms. I think that's an important thing to consider.
Thank you for that, Jamie. And Councillor Marsh, I see Alison Chambers wants to come in to add something to that too.
Yes, good morning. Councillor Marsh, just to take on that point around how do we roll that out to every other secondary school. So I would reassure you that Jamie spoke to all head teachers back in January of last year. So that was primary and secondary head teachers, where he shared his policy, shared how he got to that point of having the policy. And then just to give you that further reassurance, we have been back to every secondary school, and I am confident that every school has a policy process that is very similar, if not exact same but very similar to what we have in Stranraer Academy.
Thanks, Alison. Are you content with that response?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just lastly, when are we going to see this return to committee? Because I think it's vitally important that we set down the ground rules and these safeguarding rules as quickly as we possibly can.
Through you, Chair, would it be helpful, given that I understand that the youth councillors are moving to a period of consultation, that we wait until we have that timeline and then come back to members once we're aware. But I accept that we have to do this quickly and that politics moves quickly around about us. And we know that the 4 countries within the UK are already moving. We've heard reference today to politicians making statements around their willingness to support us in reducing the distraction from mobile phones and the expectations on parents in terms of mobile data and parental controls. So if we work in parallel with our youth councillors, undertaking the consultation, and our parent council representatives taking on board the views of the wider parent body in terms of their responsibility and also the AI and guardrails. So at a minimum, I would expect 6 months. Would that be fair? But I know we'll have to agree the mandate and then come back with a timeline towards this. But please be assured, members, that this work is ongoing. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Gillian. Councillor Stevenson.
Yeah, thank you. Just to pick up a few points when Julie was discussing what her school does, that's what we need, is that consistency. So our schools had the police in to speak to parents and pupils. That doesn't happen in every school, and that's the point that we're needing to try and get to, is that every school has that point. You know, I brought in all the evidence from different universities, from different groups, and I put the motion forward, so I'm not going to go back into it. However, when a child has their own mobile phone as a bring your own device policy and it's connected to Wi-Fi or they're using their own data, what they have in front of them is something that they can access social media on, that, you know, is lots and lots of different distractions sitting there within the classroom and they're using it, and that's why we need to get to a point where that distraction isn't there. You don't have that on a council provided bit of IT. You've got it on your own device. You can't connect to Facebook when you've got a council laptop. If we agree to block social media from our Wi-Fi, and we've got the filters there that you do that, but if you're using your own device, you've got those distractions sitting there in front of you. Now, I know as well as anybody else, if I'm looking for something and I'm researching it on my phone and a notification comes through, I'm just as guilty as anybody else. So this isn't about attacking children and not listening to their point of view. It's saying we didn't have those distractions there in the classroom, and it's not fair that you do too. And my last question's actually for Jamie is, given that you've implemented this policy, would you ever go back to the one you had before? Thank you.
That's very easy, Councillor. No, it's certainly been the right move, and as I say, I think I fully support the ambitions and the consideration for the safety of our young people. I would just maybe the plea is to work with us as head teachers, because there's some pragmatism and some reality about making the outcomes that you want work really well in schools for our staff and for our young people.
Thanks for that, Jamie. I think it's about, again, nobody's disagreeing, but we need to make sure we're doing it the right way, working with head teachers in schools, working with the young people and parents and carers. We need to, so of course when we get all these consultation results back, when we get all the information back, then it's something we bring a paper forward, and then we move to next considerations. Do we do a blanket? Do we do a ban? Do we stick as is? But it's something we need all the information from all the partners. And I think my recommendation right now is switch your notifications off, Councillor Stevenson. They'll not be popping up. Mr McGill.
Thank you. I support Councillor Stevenson's comment around the consistency across the secondary school estate when it comes to the policies that are in place. I would agree it isn't consistent at the moment. Jamie's here today, and absolutely his policy rollout, the engagement with parents, as he's pointed out, was absolutely crucial to that. The guidance from the Scottish Government came out in August 2024. I believe our director had spoken to head teachers in February, March of 2024. We're now at February of 26. We're talking about installing guardrails instead of policy around attempting to try and mitigate harm from smart mobile phones, which is going to extend that period, and the director has pointed that out. I'll say again, nobody in the Western world has come up with a set of appropriate guardrails, policy to protect children from what they're seeing on somebody else's phone in their social areas. So I would ask, what makes your plan for guardrails instead of policies or protections different than what nobody else has managed to achieve in terms of reducing the addictive industry that exists around this technology, something which the Education Minister for Scotland has said she fully supports? You've selectively quoted from the Scottish guidance, yet last week the Education Minister came out and said, the guidance is clear. I support a full ban on smartphones. But we are talking here about a set of guardrails which are nondescript. We've got no detail about that. And yet they show no educational value in terms of improving attainment. Dumfries and Galway lies towards the bottom in Scotland, and approximately 9 months to a year behind England, who are, ironically, removing smartphones from their education systems post-vote. So what detail are we given, or what detail are we going to have around these stringent guardrails that's going to be doing it better than an addiction industry that employs billions of dollars of educational psych to make sure that these devices are on, to make sure they cannot do without them?
And we understand that parents have strong views, partners have strong views, learners, young people and school communities have strong views. We also recognise the real harms that Mr Farker referred to, and the phrase that harms bedrooms, not classrooms. I think that has certainly stuck out for me today. We are also not standing in the face of progress, and nor are we standing against the views of our young people and our school communities and the learning that we've had over the last 3 years. In fact, I understand that Dalbeattie High School introduced their policy in 2013, so these are long-standing policies. The Cabinet Secretary, of course, has made reference to supporting a ban, but I'm sure, and I don't want to speak on her behalf, but I'm sure she would not wish to do that against the views of our young people. What she would mean, I would imagine, is that she would support the use of mobile phones in conjunction with the developments within the school community. So I will support a head teacher in reducing mobile phone access. And I will support our young people in supporting us in using mobile phones. But the questions around the addictive nature of the technology, about the attainment gap, around the Scottish English curriculum use, I think these are very broad assumptions that one leads to another. One does not necessarily lead to another. And I know people have got strong views on this, but I think what we have in front of us today are it's a request that we, firstly, look at alternatives to bring your own device. We need to bring back 2 members, alternatives to that, costed alternatives, and that will include guardrails. And we have already committed that we will work with schools, children and young people to develop this set of guardrails in response to the outcomes from the young people's consultation. Thank you.
Thanks, Gillian. I think, Jamie, you want to come in?
Thank you, Chair. Just by way of maybe reassurance to Mr McGill and elected members, France, for example, has national legislation of something probably quite similar to, I think, a lot of people would advocate for. If you compare the realities of that on the ground to our approach, they're actually almost identical in reality. So whether it's national or local legislation, or whether it's head teachers making the right decisions as promptly as they can for their young people, I think most countries, legislative areas, schools are coming to the same conclusions. And we don't need to wait for the legislation or the guidance to catch up. Head teachers are making those decisions now.
Thank you for that. You want to come in on that? What you
Is it just a quick comment for clarification? Education Minister in England has suggested that they would support, and it has to go through the process. The Cabinet Secretary for Education in Scotland said she would support a local authority or a head teacher to ban mobile phones. She did not say that she thinks that's the way forward in isolation. And I think, I repeat, what we're asked to agree here is for officers to work with schools, children and young people to develop a comprehensive set of guardrails. Whether it's a policy or not, it's a set of guardrails that we can agree upon. And I go back to the devolved school management. The head teacher and the parents and the children of a particular school can make their own flexible judgments, but acknowledging the fact that we may have to set a standard. But that slight flexibility within schools should be left to the schools. But that's for discussion. I'm starting to make statements that I shouldn't be doing. This is an ongoing process, and we need to trust in the people to come back with a paper, and then we can have an informed discussion.
Do you want to come back in, Jamie?
Sorry, Chair, I don't want to monopolise. I just, I'm conscious again, because we have done an awful lot of consultation and discussion around this in our school community. The use of the term phone ban was, the language around that was immediately slightly problematic. I think Julie referred to something earlier, in that our young people, the longest bus journey for our young people is over an hour. So they're on a bus for an hour before and after school. So we wouldn't have got the support of the community to not have those young people with mobile phones to assure their safety before and after and communicate their whereabouts with parents. So the notion that we will ever get to a place where there are no mobile phones in school buildings, I don't think is realistic or takes us forward. What we want is young people buying in compliance and these devices switched off and in their bags unless they're being used for a very, very specific educational purpose for a very small percentage of the school day. So the phone ban issue is perhaps one more of nomenclature than reality.
Thank you for that, Jamie. You're not monopolising anything. Your lived experience of how this works within a school is really valuable to these discussions. So thank you. Councillor Dempster.
Thanks, Chair. I hope I heard what Gillian was saying, in as much as we would get another report back suggesting which direction of travel we might want to take. For me, for what it's worth, I believe that we should set policy and schools should then implement that policy. And we have a duty of care for our children, and we should do that by setting policy, however flexible that might be. And I'm encouraged by the approach that Stranraer's taken and the response Alison gave, that most of the primary school teachers have adopted the same sort of approach. But I think we should set policy. Within that, there might be some flexibility within schools, because I don't think we just have a random approach where all of our schools decide what they do with protection and security, etc. But I'm looking forward to maybe a report coming back with some proposals on how we set a policy that's an acceptable policy, and within that the schools have some degree of flexibility. Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Gillian.
Thanks, Councillor.
Thanks, Mr. Stick.
Thanks, Councillor Dempster. What I thank members for all your contribution and everyone else who came to contribute. What I'm getting is everyone, regardless of where you sit on the scale of what you feel about this issue, wants to do the right thing for our young people. And it's just about making sure that we do that to the best of our ability. So a paper coming forward following all these consultations, and a move to, and I don't disagree with a policy neither, that head teachers adhere to, perhaps shining example of that, Mr Farquhar. So yes, I think thanks very much, members, because this has been really good discussions, and everyone just seems to want the right things for our young people, and that's what we're here for, what we're on this committee for. So I'll move to the recommendations. Members are asked to 1, agree the digital school strategy in Appendix 1, 2, agree that the digital school strategy forms part of the revised school IT and digital strategy as detailed in paragraph 4.7, consider and agree that officers to explore alternatives and cost implications to bring your own device, referred to in paragraph 4.3 and detailed in Appendix 1, page 21, and agree for officers to work with schools, children and young people to develop a comprehensive set of guardrails for mobile phone use, digital technologies and artificial intelligence use in schools in Dumfries and Galloway as set out in section 4.4. And not added to the recommendations, but if that in turn means that we set policy from that paper, then that will be the way that we would go. So thank you, members, for that. And thank you, Jamie and Rachel. So, agenda item 15, serious incidents in schools, report by Executive Director, Education, Skills and Community Wellbeing. Alison Chambers online is here to assist. Alison, have you got anything to add to the papers?
Nothing further to add to the paper, thank you.
Thank you. So I'll open it up to members. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you. I've just got a couple of things on this. So just looking at the cascade procedure on page 616, 4.5, and it says ward members if appropriate. I'm just wondering what is appropriate, because the reason I brought this motion forward in the first place was on the back of an incident at a school in my own ward, and even after there was a press inquiry put in weeks and weeks after the incident, ward members still weren't notified of the incident, so therefore it was on the front page of the newspaper, but ward members hadn't been informed, and neither had parents for that matter. So I'm just wondering what is appropriate, and I suppose just looking, I'd asked for the process to come forward, and I maybe should have been more clear, because what I was really asking was, what's the process that's followed in the school? So I get they fill in a form, there's the communication cascade, but what actually happens when there's an incident in the school? What do the school do apart from filling in a form? Like lockdowns, my wee girls quite often tell me about the lockdown practice when there's a bull in the playground. So just that would be my main questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. So you're asking from stage 1, from when an incident happens, what's the full process and how does that go? Yeah, thank you. Alison, do you want to come in on that?
Oh, thank you for the question, Councillor Wilson. So again, the incident that you speak about, I can't speak about that actual incident, of course, but I can speak about incidents in general. And incidents are rare in school. I want to start with that point, that these are not things that are happening every day. We do have specific paperwork for fire drills, and as you mentioned yourself, the lockdown drill. Some call it a bull, some call it tiger, whatever we want to call that. But in terms of those incidents, they are, you can imagine that when it is an actual incident, it's quite fluid in terms of how people react. But the first thing for all schools is about the safety of the young people and the safety of the school community. So therefore, that's the first point of call, is to ensure that the school is safe. In terms of how they then report that incident, the incident, as you can see through the paper, is reported through contacting a duty member. A duty member is a member of the senior management team within the Education and Learning Community Directorate, and we have that contact number that schools can contact someone during the day or after school. It is at that point where we try to gather the information as quickly as we can, and then it is sent on to the senior leaders within the Directorate. So that's Gillian, John and Jim, and it's up to themselves to ensure that they then make the decisions of then that how is disseminated. But I have to go back to the point that these incidents are rare, and there are specific procedures for fire and lockdown. But when it's a different type of incident, something perhaps includes a knife or a weapon, then sometimes they're very, very fluid, but it's about safety. Safety is paramount of our young people and their school communities.
Thanks, Alison. How are you with that, Councillor Wilson? Do you need more information?
No, it absolutely should be about the safety of the children, but what I was asking as well was, how do you determine when it's appropriate for ward members to be notified, and actually parents as well? Like, what is appropriate? Because this incident was a serious incident, I would say, and I don't think parents or members should be reading that on the front page of a newspaper. Thank you.
No, thank you, Councillor Wilson. And your direct question is, and who makes that decision of how, who informs the ward members? And that sits with the SLT within the directorate, so that's with Gillian, John and Jim. However, I would say in the instant that did happen that you are referring to, was it the right call? It is still a human decision, so therefore, in hindsight, could it have been a better decision? Could you have been informed? Absolutely, we could have changed our opinion in that one. But certainly, it's passed on to, as I say, Gillian, John and Jim, and they make the decision to then follow that up.
And if I could add to that, I think I was going to come in and say these are judgment calls, and I think we have all learnt from this particular case. We trust that our communication cascades are robust, and I think that as judgment calls, we are working with the information we had at the time, with the people that are available at the time, with the processes are often moving. I think, as Alison said, with hindsight, would we have made a different call? This has been a good opportunity for us to reflect back that we will share information with ward members as soon as we have it. I'm sure you don't want to be bothered with every slip, trip or fall, but absolutely recognise that on this occasion this did bring some community spotlight, and that a different decision could have been made, and I think we have to take responsibility for that. Thank you.
Thanks. I just think I'm probably like most members where we don't really like surprises and we'd rather have a heads up, but I just think the fact that a press inquiry did come in and we still weren't informed is, and I hope there has been a lesson learned on that, because actually we then get inquiries because what's included in the press inquiry, like timings of when it was reported to yourselves, and that just adds to, you know, we end up getting questioned on that as to timings as well. So it is helpful just to get a heads up on stuff, especially if you've had a press inquiry in, although I'd rather know about it weeks before when it's actually happened. Thank you.
No, thank you for that, Councillor, and absolutely we recognise that we should have perhaps made a different decision, a different judgment on that occasion.
Thank you, Alison. Councillor Stevenson.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I would like to see that, if appropriate, removed. It gives us confidence to know that if there is a serious incident, we are informed, but it gives us confidence to say, and I know my own community, sometimes, you know, the number 10 bus is pretty much the gossip bus, and things go round very, very quickly round the community, and if they're not true, at least we have the confidence to know that, no, they're not true because we've not been informed. So it's not just about knowing when it does happen, it's having the confidence to know that if you do hear something that's quite alarming, you can say, actually, do you know what, we've not been informed, so it's not happened the way it's been described, and we can counteract that communication from the public in real time, as opposed to waiting maybe a week later and realising we weren't informed, but actually the community did know. Thank you.
No, that's an excellent point to make, and it keeps us working as a team. So no, that's an excellent point, Councillor Stevenson.
I'm happy to do that. Just for in terms of scale, I received 3 yesterday. So 3 incident forms yesterday. One was about a pupil who had fallen unwell. One was about a parental complaint that had happened back in December. And another was about a member of staff who had to leave the building. So that as you say, the incidents that are perhaps more related to informing ward members, serious incidents are remarkably rare, but we do get incidents forms coming in from schools on a very regular basis because we don't like surprises otherwise. So we're happy to take that out, and perhaps over the coming weeks and months, if you feel that we are sharing too much information with you, I don't want to cry wolf. If you have a lot of information, sometimes it's difficult to establish which ones are the key ones, but I will ensure that from this point that ward members are informed of incident reporting forms. Thank you.
Just to come back, and I think it's more on serious incidents. Do you know, somebody having to leave is not a serious incident for us, but the school being in a lockdown, or you know, the police have been called to the school, that's a serious incident, and that's kind of what sets, you know, the hairs among the heather. Thank you.
Sorry, I'm going to come back again because I think it's that judgment of what is serious. We refer to them as the blue light form, the blue light. So if you've got an ambulance attending a school because a child has become unwell or a member of staff has become unwell, that's still a blue light incident. And I think in the pace of a school day, trying to make that judgment as to what is a serious incident or what becomes a serious incident has been in the past quite a difficult call to make, and that's why they come to the chief officers. And as Alison said, we could have and should have on reflection made a different judgment on that day, but we are trying to give members the right level of information, and we will make sure that we do so in the future.
I just think I'd rather have too much information than not enough. So, thank you.
Yeah, thanks for that. Any other questions from members? No, we'll move to recommendations. Members are asked to, 1, note the existing school incident reporting process, Appendix 1, and the incident reporting cascade procedure, Appendix 2, and agree to align the incident reporting cascade procedure with the procedure the procedure used within the wider council. So I've got no other urgent business. I want to thank members and officers for all your contributions today. Thank you, everyone.